Hiya ladies and gents, welcome to another hobby desk. Today I am painting the Wall of Martyrs Imperial Defence line. So in the pack comes two of these, exactly the same each, and I love the detail. So from all the tiny little frag grenades to the less fortunate Imperial Guards. So I've already painted up the bunker that these guys can straddle. Yes, that's right, I said straddle. And I pretty enjoyed it, so I picked up two of these. So, you know, completes the set, right? So, what I'm going to do is cut it all off the sprue, get rid of any of those nasty mold lines, if there is any. But this is looking really good, to be fair. There's, you know, perfect definition on the terrain and the trench floor. I love the end pieces here, which you can stick on the ends if you want to, or you can just keep loose, because on the full set you get a couple of joining sections and a couple of these bent sections, and then you got the bunker, things like that. So you can keep it modular and change it however you want. So you can put these on the ends here, or when you've got the T-junctions, things like that, you can put them on those bits. So it's completely interchangeable kit. Like I said before, really like the look of the dead Imperial Guard there. So I'm going to cut it all out, and my plan is the other sections I've already assembled that had these pieces, I sprayed silver, because as much as I want the Imperial Eagle to be gold or brass, I think it's probably a bit garish for something that's supposed to be trenches. You don't really want to draw attention, so I'm going to spray these up, all these four pieces individually, just silver, just to save time with an airbrush. I'm going to do the same on the other sprue as well, and then I'm going to start spraying the greys of the wall. So what I've done previously is two different colour greys on the wall, a nice blending gradient. So you start off really dark at the base, get lighter at the tip, and then dry brush it, and a bit of a dark trench itself, and then put some weathering powder on the top. Painted the Imperial Guards as Cadians, and then painted the skeletons, applied some washes, make it look a bit grubby. So that's the initial plan. Let's see how it gets on. Right, I'll start cutting them out of the sprue. So these pieces are fantastic for the mold line point of view, because there really isn't any. I mean, I was expecting something along the top of the trench itself, just a thin line, even. Not that. Nothing. Just a couple of little bits here and there, like those little bits there, that connect directly to the sprue. Just maybe run a knife over. Three on the end there, which are relatively flat now. But remember, don't cut these little knobbly bits off, because that can join into the other section and stops it from moving around quite so much on the table. There's still a little bit of slop there, but a couple of layers of paint should tighten that up. So what I'm going to do now is use a cheapy rattle can, so just a pound can from the local pound store, just plain old black, just to seal it all. And I like the fact that it's going to be dark initially and lighter on the higher edges, so making it look a bit grimdark, a bit grubby. Okay, so I'm going to rattle can off camera and outside so I don't kill myself with the fumes. Okay, so like I said before, I used a cheap rattle can. So that was only £1, just to seal and make this stuff look a bit dirtier once I spray it up. So I'm using an airbrush for speed, but obviously you can use a regular brush, it's totally fine. And I'm using a Vallejo gunmetal silver. So gunmetal, because I want to make it look a bit on the dirty side later on. So just going to spray these up. Of course, you can stick them on a painting handle or a piece of cork or something, rather than just holding it like I'm doing now. And probably should be wearing gloves, because I will get it on myself at some stage. But with this metal, eventually I'll be putting a wash over it. I probably won't be putting 2 coats of this paint on it because I want the metal to look a bit aged and dirty. Once I put a wash on it, that will look pretty good. I'm going to make it look too clean. After all, it is a defence line. It is trenches, it's seen war, blood, bullets, and bodies. Most of those unfortunate bodies are still there, still at the foot of these trenches. So once these little pieces are all done, next you could do these sections. So that's where these plates stick. So you won't be seeing that part anyway. So I'll just spray that up there, because you will be seeing the foot where all the rivets are. It should really be the same colour. So going on quite smoothly. Same on the other large section. Like I said, airbrush purely for speed. Now these sections also have a metal bulkhead, so I will paint these up as well. Just like so. So the back will be painted with concrete looking colour. Just for now, I'm doing the face. And like I said before, airbrush purely for speed. Same methods apply with a brush. At this stage anyway. The blending of the walls, of the colour, different greys of the walls, that is better with an airbrush to give the same effect that I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it next. Okay, so for the next stage, this is my personal favourite for a dark grey. Now this is enamel, and it is obviously for an airbrush. But obviously you can't clean an airbrush out with water after this stuff. You have to use alcohol, white spirit, something like that. Spirit based rather than water based. But this, I'm not sure if this is still in circulation. Umbro obviously still do paints, but I'm not sure if they do airbrush paints anymore. But I have thinned down Umbro enamel paints before to use with an airbrush. But this is what I'm personally using. But use whatever dark grey you wish. So this is the kind of grey I'm after. Now this grey over black, fairly lightly, should be quite a dark grey. So make sure your compressor is turned on. Your airbrush is good to go. So as per always, I'm going to test a little bit of this. Spraying lovely. So what you want to do is just start at the top, tease your way down until you're nearly down to the bodies. Like so. So it should be a fairly dark grey. Lighter at the top, darker at the bottom. Just doing those little spikes on the top as well. Light at the top, dark at the bottom. Like so. Rinse and repeat on all of those sections. And when it comes to this particular section, same rules apply. Lighter to dark. Lighter, dark. And don't worry about the overspray on the inside edge. You're about to paint that anyway. So it's important to do the outer bits first, I feel, because you will get some overspray. Unless you want to mask it off, which isn't a problem, you can do that. But as we're going to paint that section anyway, I never feel it's an issue. So I'll do the same this side. Nice and light to start with. Like so. Oh, gotta do the bit at the end as well, just a little bit. Here and here, and like I said, we're doing the inside now. So light before, light at the top. Darker at the bottom, just like so. I'll spin it around. Do the same on the other side. Okay, so like I said, airbrush really does speed this process up. So I'll carry on doing all the other little bits. Okay, next we just do a little hint of a lighter grey. So this time around I'm using US Compass Grey. But basically just use a light grey this time around. So not white, because we'll be using a little bit of that to dry brush this when it dries. So important with this stuff to give it a shake like any other paint. And it really does go on smoothly, this Umbro enamel airbrush paint. Really do rate it, so if you can find some, let me know if it's still a thing, because I know this particular batch is extremely old. So I am going to turn down the airbrush compressor just a little bit and just give it a little bit of a light going over. So this is literally just the topmost. Just like so. So you see it's a bit lighter already. So that's the general idea. Same with these. Just a bit whiter on the top. Good old airbrush really does speed up terrain painting. Right, and I'll carry on. Okay, it's dry brush time. So I like to use the lightest grey I have, which is nearly a white. Just put a little bit on your brush and rub off all of the excess. So you should have that kind of level of dry brushing. So I'm sure you all know how to dry brush by now. Just wipe off all the excess. And this is purely the topmost. So all the rivets, the spikes, a little bit of the surrounding area. Just like so. Nothing massive at all. There's a few little notches and stuff on the top of the barricade. They look great when they're just picked up. A little bit of dry brushing. Just like so. And the same thing on these sections. Just like so. So rinse and repeat on all of them. I'll carry on with the rest. Okay, so now for the base of the trench. What do I mean by that? What I mean is this bit here. So what I want to do is a rusty brown colour. And being rusty, I want some of the rust dust, I guess, to wear off around the surrounding edges. So I've got a bit of a burnt umber colour, funny enough. This is actually called Burnt Umber by Vallejo. And I'm dropping a little bit of orange as well. Giving that a little bit of a stir in my airbrush. Consistency, yep, that looks pretty good. Right, so starting off in the middle, the thickest part's going to be there. And then we're going to start spreading and getting thinner as we go. Just like so. So this is hopefully what you get. You get a little bit of overspray in the corners to make it look like dust has been thrown up. And as you can tell, it's still wet, still drying. And the more vibrant piece is through the center. So when this dries, I'll apply some pigments to make it look like lots of dust has been chucked in there. But first, now that these have dried, you can stick them on and start applying some washes to them. So it's just regular old super glue. As there's paint down, plastic glue wouldn't really work. So I'm just going to put a little smear on each one as I go. There's one. There's another one. Just like so. Nice and simple. So for the wash, I like to use a little bit of this. If you wanted your barriers to look a bit more decayed, maybe a bit more rusty, grimy, then I would suggest maybe using a Agrax Earthshade wash, something like that. But for this, I mean, I want it dirty, but I don't want it old. So I'm just going to plaster this stuff on. Lots and lots and lots and lots. Careful not to get on the wall section. So it doesn't matter if you get over here a little bit at the moment. Just like that. Put on fairly thick. And those rivets to look dirty. Just like that. And I'll do it with all of them, obviously. And the trenches as well. So anything metallic that we've painted so far on the trenches, put the null oil on. So I'll keep doing this while I pause the camera. So next you want to pick the colour for your armour, for your Imperial Guards on the base. So the dead little guys on the base, I would like to paint them as Cadians. So what I'm going to do is paint them using this green. But obviously what other colour, you could do like grey armour, like creamy armour. There's so many different Imperial Guard armours. But this is for all the shoulder pads, the helmets and the chest plates. So there's a lot of that lining the bases because there's a lot of dead guys. So I'll do that. And any of the ammo crates. So you see on the other side, I'm also going to paint these ammo crates all green as well. So picking out all the detail, like I said, the helmets, the main part of the gun, I'm going to paint green as well. So, good old last gun. Prime weapon of the Imperial Guard. The Imperium of Man. Nothing compared to a bolt gun, but still. And I'm painting the water canteen now. And over here we have the shoulder pad. So with this, I'm going to cover all of the pieces intended from the armour, shoulder pads, etc. With 2 thin coats, because I'm painting over quite a dark colour. And as grubby as I want this, I'll still need a decent coverage. So 2 coats on this, and then time the first one dries, should be good to go over again, because I should have finished the last one by that stage. And then I'm going to throw some washes on it to make it look really grubby. So these guys obviously just skulls and armour, so either they've been horribly burnt or they've been there for some time. Either way, they're going to look rather dirty. So I'll finish this up, all the greens, 2 coats on all of it. And then I'll get some nice grubby washes. Okay, so all the green has had 2 coats, so it's looking quite vibrant. And you notice on each one has an aquila. So you can use gold, maybe a bronze, or even if you wanted to, use a silver. But traditionally, it's like a bronzy, goldy colour to paint all those aquillas. And there's a lot of those aquillas. So get a little bit of paint on your tile or your wet palette, whatever you like to use. And paint all the aquillas. So like I said, there is lots and lots and lots of them. So metallics, I find you often have to have 2 coats of them. Even if your initial base colours, like this green, didn't need 2 coats, which this one did. Metallics always need 2 coats. Some companies that make metallic paint, their metallics are very thick, and that takes a lot of the detail away, so I would recommend thinning out the paint in doing so anyway. So you can see that I'm trying to support my hand on the desk, and the other one is using the little finger to try to support, so I'm not quite so shaky. Like I said before, these aren't being painted as miniatures, this is terrain, so it's going to be grubby, it's going to be dirty, and I'm not going to spend time doing ultra thin highlights or anything like that, but you're more than welcome to do so. For these crates have been there for some time and have been blasted and blown up and had dust all over them. They're going to be really grubby in a bit. So I'm just going to do the basic colours, apply lots of washes and maybe some pigments. So lots of acrylics to go. I will carry on doing this on all the terrain pieces. Okay, so next I like a little bit of lead belcher, but any silver will do. Obviously we're going to make it grubby in a minute anyway, but I would like to put it on the lasguns, any cannons, any grenade launchers, things like that need a bit of a silver touch, like stocks on weapons, knives maybe, things like that. Obviously the main plates have already been done silver, and put a bit of null oil on previously. But this stuff, this would be like rusty weapons, things like that. So when we put our washes on, the silver will be dulled down and look more brown, possibly orangey, with a level of rust. Okay, so pop this sucker open. A little bit on my tile. Get my brush to a nice fine point. And start picking out some detail. So, what do we have here? A nice bayonet, which we'll paint up, a stock of a gun, and this barrel here as well. So stock is there somewhere, another barrel there, another knife, and like I said before, with metals, you may need to put several thin coats down. That's the first one, and away. So there's a little ammo magazine there. Any cartridges, any magazines, any barrels, and any stocks. Well, I'll keep on picking out some details. Okay, so once all the silvers are done, and we still haven't put a wash down yet, because we want to get some white on the bones. So a fast way of painting bones. These are going to be bones that are obviously in the dirt, really grimy. So what I like to do is use a basic white, so like white scar, 2 layers of this over the bones, because remember the bones are pretty much black at the moment because of the rattle cam. And then once dry, I use an Agrax wash over the bones to make them look really dirty, scorched, and been there for a while. So normally, bones on a miniature, I will edge highlight and bring up the layers and start blending it to make it look more like bleached bone, like trophies on a belt, things like that. But no, these are going to be scorched and horrible, and seeing as there's so many of these skulls, that's what I'm going to do. So a very basic way of painting bones. So just get a bit of white on your brush, make a nice tip. So the first pass is going to be a very basic pass. You just go over the whole of the skull entirely. And then the second time round, it's the utmost part of the skull. So it's very, very basic. But these are going to be blackened and scorched and burnt, not polished and well looked after skulls. Just like so, and there's a lot to do. So I'll keep on plugging away at this, because I can see there's a little arm bone there. And there's a lot and lot of these scattered amongst these barricades. Okay, so once you put 2 coats of whatever white you're using over all the bones, and there's a lot of bones. In fact, I'm pretty sure this isn't an Imperial defense line, this is probably a Chaos defense line. So I think it's probably been mispackaged. You know, if Khorne ever needed a new throne, you might as well just use this terrain instead. That's a lot of skulls. I mean, in each segment alone, there's probably like 5 dead guardsmen, and yeah, that's just a lot of dead guardsmen. I'm not entirely sure these guys are well trained or not. Yeah. Anyway, so with the white, you'll probably notice there's occasional grenade or two hidden in the mix. In fact, on this one here, there's a whole box of grenades. So for the grenades, I've initially painted them white because I'm going to put a little bit of this over the top to make them pop a little bit more. So once the agrax is over the top of it, then it will tone down. But the raised areas, ideally, would like to make quite bright. So using a little bit of this, put it on any grenade that you find. And there is a few scattered around, so it's a bit like Where's Wally. So just a little bit of green on the palette. And this one's pretty easy because, you know, that's a whole box of grenades, but you really do have to look at, I mean, for example, there is one grenade there, just there. It is like Where's Wally. So look out for those grenades, people, and paint them up. Once you've picked out all the grenades, next you'll find there's a few pouches scattered amongst the debris as well. So I like a nice lightish brown for when we put the agrax over the top. It will pick out the low spots and make them quite dark brown. So like I said, this is a very basic piece of terrain because these guys are basically in the dust. They've been trampled in, they've been blasted. I'm not going to pick out all the high spots of the pouches, but you may feel like you want to. You may really feel like you want to make these guys pop, and that's fine. If that's how you want to paint them, it's totally up to you. So finding any pouches like so, and as like the rest of it, you might find you need 2 thin coats. So I'll find all the pouches, and once again, there's a lot of pouches. This terrain is magnificent. I really do like it. There's so much detail going on. The more you look, the more there is. So if you really want to make it pop, and edge highlight all this after doing all the washes, and that's great. Really draws people's eye to the table. Right, I'll carry on getting all those pouches. Okay, so here comes the fun bit, the wash that ties it all together. So a good bit of agrax earthshade. So everything you've done so far has been base colours. So you might want to dry brush the bones, bring them up a bit more, maybe edge highlight the weapons, things like that if you want to. I want this stuff to be trampled into the dirt, so it's kind of going to be a background rather than a key feature to this. So I'm really going quite thick with the wash here, getting it into the bones, and you can see straight away, let's bring up some of the detail. Go quite heavy, even get a bit on the surrounding areas of the base because it's going to be muddy. Everything's going to be trampled in, so everything but the actual barricade itself, so not that, but everything around it. Really swamp it and stuff, and work it in, just like that. Normally I wouldn't go that far on metals, like on the stock of the rifles, things like that, especially when the guys are still alive, because, you know, they'll look after the weapons, things like that. But this time around, it's definitely not been looked after. Been trampled into the mud, been shot at, set on fire, you name it. So really get those washes working in there. Quite heavy, more heavy than you would normally do for a miniature. Like so. Okay, we'll wait until it all dries and show you the next stage. But I better paint the rest, I guess, first. So I'm not going to use airbrush on this section here, because eventually I will dry brush it, and then I want to put a lot of the weathering pigments down. So with that, I want to make it look dusty and dry. If I put airbrush down, I would have to put it over the whole thing and then paint the top, then dry brush, or spend ages pin washing it in all the recesses. Now I don't want the floor to look dirty, dark. I want it to look dirty. So if I put the airbrush on it, it would darken it up a little bit. And I want this to be dusty and well used, this track. Okay, so once the airbrush is dry, or whatever wash you would like to use, this is the kind of look you get. So it's a little bit dirty, a little bit dusty. As you can see, I painted this drum here a bleachy bone kind of colour before putting the airbrush on. You could use it as a bit of a spot colour in the trenches if you want. Paint it, I don't know, red, white, red, you know, like the newer barrels. A lot of people were painting it that kind of colour, which is great for a spot colour, but I wanted it to be quite Imperial Guard-esque colours, so I've done it like that. In a minute I will put some of the weathering powders on and I will dirty it up. But what I like to do is get a tiny little bit of sponge. So I just tore a bit of sponge off. A blister pack sponge, the good old blister pack sponges that you used to get. And I've got myself a bit of Rhinox oxide on a tile here. I like to dab it. And it gives a bit of a chipping effect. So I'm just going to apply that to the drum. Just like so. Tiny little chips all over the drum. The edges are obviously worse. That's where it gets dragged around, a bit beaten. So you could always, if you can't get in somewhere, you could always use a pair of tweezers, like so. Just getting it in, just like that. So it makes the drum look a bit more beaten up, a bit more realistic. And if you really want to put some effort into that chipping, rather than just making it look a bit dirty like that, get the same colour as you painted your barrel before you applied the wash, and paint the lower side of the chip. So just tiny little dabs rather than straight lines. Just on the lower side of the chip even, I can speak. Just like so. It's probably a bit too much there, but that kind of thing. So you can see now it's given some kind of depth to the chip. So just a little bit under. Just in the deepest parts, just to make it look like it's a bit like the paint's got a thickness to it on the drum, and when the paint was chipped off, it shows a little bit of the thickness. Just like that. You don't have to go crazy, but just a little bit every now and again, just to give it some depth. And that same colour, which is good old-fashioned bleach bone, is quite nice when you apply it as a dry brush to the centre. So that trench area earlier on, I said, you know, don't touch with the wash. Just get a really dry brush, work it in there, and just pick up the top of a few of the rivets. Doesn't need a lot, just a suggestion. Just makes the rivets pop out a little bit more, making it look less flat, because at the moment obviously the rivets will look a bit like it's one colour, which it is, funny enough. So a little bit of that. So you can see the difference between the two. That one there pops a little bit, whereas that one there is a bit flat. I'll carry on with both pieces. You don't have to push it too hard, just to give a bit of a suggestion. So I will do the same. Just getting those rivets popping out a little bit there, especially around that hatch. Just like so. And any dirty colour will do, really. You know, it's got to be fairly light, but browns, light greens, or even bony colours. And the next thing I like to personally add is this. So, I'll turn the light off a minute. How's that? Better? There we go. Vietnam Earth. So this is by MIG Ammo, or Ammo MIG, and it's super dry pigments. So just get a little bit of that. You don't need a lot. I like to use the lid to knock a little bit off there. And it's purely just to run a little bit of dirt all around the bottom of the base. So just rub it in. And this can be as strong as you like. A little bit on the top, because the dust will settle. And some of the rocks, some of the crates. Just really work it in there. Of course, they do other colours as well. This is just my personal preference. And you can always dry brush a little bit of something on as well. But I really feel like these pigments add a bit of texture, not just colour. Just like that. And then when you've done both sides, you can always do it a bit in the middle. Now I like to go slap bang in the middle, and occasionally in a corner as well. Just like in there. Just like the wind's blowing the dirt into the corner. So adding a little bit more. See, it's got quite strong in that corner. Quite strong in that corner. Just a little bit here and there. So like when some troopers have ran through here, they didn't wipe their feet. How dare they? But it just looks a bit more realistic. A bit random. It's very much more like real life. And if you really go to town if you want to, you could put some typhus corrosion in there. If you feel like there's some wet mud nearby, that looks fantastic because of the texture and typhus corrosion. But I like a little bit of arid dust. Okay, and this is the final piece. So lots of washes and weathering and things like that. Very basic painting. You don't have to be, you know, a painting god or a genius to do this. You can push it further. This is tabletop standard and possibly beyond. Not being too big-headed. But yeah, you can dry brush all the rivets, put some streaking grime and some rust in there. But all the ends are painted up as well, and it's completely modular. So this kit comes with the two dog's legs, you know, two slightly bent pieces. I don't know what else you call it. And, you know, they're modular. They can slide together with the two little bits, little dowels that I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, which is great. You can have it like that, and you can mix it up a little bit. But there is other pieces in the kit, you know, T-junctions, cross sections, and a little bunker as well, which I do love. So this all, you know, can slot together quite well. It is all modular, so not a problem. It can look fantastic, and the little ends can go wherever you want. So do love this kit. and it just shows just a couple of hours and you can really rip through some great terrain. So there you go. Wall of Martyrs, or as I like to now call it, the Chaos terrain, because there's so many dead Imperial bodies. Which is the way it should be, you know. That's, lives are cheap, right? In the Imperium? Why not? But thank you very much for watching this video, guys. Please hit that like button. If you do hit the dislike button, please tell us why, so we can make some improvements in the future. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, subscribe for more great content. Thanks for watching.